Welcome to this Protocols.io webinar. My name is Anita Brolox, and I'm the head of outreach here at Protocols.io. And today's webinar, I'm very excited to share with you how you can make your protocol more reproducible and discoverable. Before we get started, just a few notes. We are recording this webinar, so please be aware of this if you're asking any questions. You can ask questions using the chat window, and there's a chat functionality. You can ask questions through that, and we'll be able to answer all these questions at the end of the webinar. Or at the end of the webinar, you will also have the chance to unmute yourself and ask questions directly. So let's get started. To start this webinar, I would like to ask a question to all of you guys, and that is, have you ever had trouble reproducing the work of someone else or your own? If you could take a moment to type in the chat window if you ever had trouble to reproduce work, that'd be very interesting to know. Okay, Chris is saying he had trouble reproducing work before. Chris, why did you have trouble reproducing work? Okay, so Chris had trouble reproducing work because of a lack of method details. Anybody else? This is Rocky, and he also had trouble reproducing work, and the underlying problem oftentimes is the way we communicate methods. In research papers, oftentimes we read sentences like, we did this with conventional methods, we did what others did, we did, and then you reference a different paper or things like that. And oftentimes we really don't mention all the details that are very important to reproduce a method. And this, so the mission with Protocols.io is to make it easy to share method details before, during, and after publication. But one thing I wanted to also share with you, this is a very exaggerated blog post, of course, but somebody is here in this blog post, they're saying, well, if you would look at the method section of a paper that's on how to draw an owl, it could read like this. We draw the owl on 60.2 GMS white paper of the A4 dimension using 3H and 6B graphite pencils. We did so by looking at owls and drawing what we saw on paper. This protocol yielded one drawn owl. Of course, again, this is very exaggerated, but oftentimes really this is kind of like the language that we find in method sections of papers, and it's really not including all the details that we need to actually reproduce this result, right? So, so our goal really with Protocols.io is to enable people to share the method details that are important. And we encourage people to share protocols in a step-by-step description. So this is what protocols, for example, in a step-by-step description could look like. And this is not a scientific protocol, but it's a protocol for drawing an image. And we won't draw this image now, but this is an exercise that I did with workshop participants a couple weeks ago. So everybody received this protocol for drawing an image or drawing a picture, and they had a couple minutes to follow this procedure. And what's very interesting, even though everybody had the same steps to follow, one protocol yielded many results. So everybody's result looked very different, even though everybody had the same instructions. And so this was a protocol how to draw SpongeBob, but not all of these, like here, not all of them look like actually SpongeBob. But what really we can learn from this is that even if you do have Protocols.io or any other platform to share your methods, and if you do share your methods, it's not enough, right? Because just because you shared something doesn't mean, just because you shared something, if you didn't put an effort into writing the recipe in a way that others can follow it, doesn't mean others can use it. So if you describe something and it's very clear to you, if you give it to somebody else, they might understand things in a completely different way, and that will result in a different result, right? So just because something is clear to you does not mean it's clear to the rest of the world. And here are some of my best practices for writing reproducible methods. And one, of course, is make sure your method is digital. So you can use protocols.io, but also Google Docs or electronic lab notebooks. Just make sure it's not on paper, because if your protocol is on a paper, it is really hard to share with others. It's hard to make corrections and optimizations, and you might get lost, or you might spill something or whatever. So just be sure it's digital. And then also think of a protocol as a brief modular, self-contained scientific publication, because that's really what it is. When we're publishing research papers, we put a lot of effort into making the whole package, right? You add an abstract, you add like discussion part, you add like all these things that are important to make a whole package, right? You put a lot of effort into it, and just try to do the same with your protocol. Try to make a whole package and include all the details that go with that protocol. And that means, for example, include a short abstract. So that it doesn't have to be long. It can be 3 to 4 sentences that just puts your method into context. And this is really helpful for anybody who will pick up this protocol in the future, because you don't know who might pick up this protocol in the future, and they might not know what you used it for, or you might even pick it up in like 10 years from now. And if you have a little abstract, it will give you, it will just tell you what this method was about and what you used it for. So it's just really helpful to let the reader know what this method is about. And also try to include as much detail as possible. And really, I really mean this one, really try to put all the details necessary. So for example, put the duration per step, or like a time. So if you have, like, for example, an incubation step, don't just say incubate, tell people exactly how long you incubated, at what temperature, because those are really critical points. And also for the reagents, try to put the exact amount that you use, and also add vendor names of reagents, and also catalog numbers, because the reagent vendors or catalog numbers, if you use a reagent from different vendor, it could actually break your method. So if somebody's trying to follow your method and they use the same reagent from a different vendor, it might not work anymore. So it's a really critical part to let others know which reagents you use from which vendor. So yeah, be sure to say that. And then also try to include any images and videos that support your steps, your step description. Because images, I think there's this saying, it's like a picture says more than 1,000 words, and oftentimes also in methods this is very true, because an image can just bring so much clarity of what you actually want to say with a description. Also little videos, and we'll see an example of this in a second. Also expected results can be helpful. So if somebody's following a method and they should expect something to happen after a certain step, just let them know so they know what to expect, right? And then also add any safety information for convenience, and for the computational part, if you're analyzing the results, include all these details too, because it's important what software packages you use, what code did you use, all these things. Also maybe your data set, so all the things that are needed to reproduce exactly what you reported. Another thing is the chronology of steps. So make sure your step is your steps are in a chronological order. Don't try to mix up that order, because it's really important for others to follow it in a chronological order. And also try to limit jargon and use active voice. So really try to be very clear in your step descriptions, and don't try to make it sound fancy by including any words that are hard to understand or things like that. For methods, it's really important to just be as clear as possible, and there's no need to try to make things sound different from somebody else's method or things like that. Just really try to be clear. That's the most important thing. And then also this is especially for when you're publishing a method, try to add keywords, because the keywords are very important to make your protocol more discoverable by others. And then also add any additional notes, recipes, tips, tricks that go with your protocol, to just anything that is obvious to you, but it will be helpful to others, it's really important to put that in here. And then a last point that I can give you a suggestion is get feedback from others. And with that, I mean, if you're writing a method and you want to publish it or you want to share it, give it to somebody else and get feedback from them. And ideally that other person, if it's a colleague or a friend, ideally somebody who doesn't know anything about the method, so give it to them and see if they would be able to reproduce it with the information you provided. And you might be very surprised of what kind of feedback you get from others. And it will help you a lot to improve your method before you share it with others. And here are just some examples of good method details. So here, as I mentioned before, is a great example of what an abstract could look like. As you can see, it's just one little paragraph, but it really is helpful to put the method into context. And it lets the reader know what the method is all about. And then also, as I mentioned, be clear in your step descriptions. Don't try to add any unnecessary details. Just really just add the step description and be really clear and let the reader know what they have to do. And then also images and videos, as mentioned, is a very powerful tool. Here on the left, you can see a protocol where the author, she is using PowerPoint to create those images. So these are not pictures, but it's like images that she does, or like graphics that she makes with PowerPoint that support her step description. And it just makes it very, it just adds so much more clarity to the step, because she is showing others how it should look like, right? And it really adds a lot of value to this protocol. Or on the right-hand side is one of my favorite protocols. This user published a protocol, and one of the steps was like a grinding tissue step, and he got a lot of comments, people asking how this actually works. And now he published a new version of his protocol where he actually included a video of how the tissue grinding is performed. And so he had a lab mate record this video with a cell phone, and he just added that. So the videos, it doesn't have to be really fancy, high quality videos. It's enough to just have like a lab made film with a cell phone camera. That's perfectly enough, and it will be really, really valuable for anybody who's following a method, because the images and the videos really support the language a lot, and it makes things very clear. And yeah, I can highly recommend adding videos and images to your protocols. And then also, I mentioned it before, but really add all the reagent details and also equipment details. On protocols.io, we give you all the ability to do that. And so you can add all the catalog numbers, the vendors, and for the equipment, you can put the equipment brand name, specifications, and things like that. So really try to take advantage of that. And then also the keywords. Again, this is for when you're publishing a method to make it more reproducible, because if somebody's searching for that keyword, your protocol will come up. And another way to make your protocol more discoverable on protocols.io are groups. Groups are a great way because if you're adding a protocol to a group, every group member will be able to see it in a group, and when you publish it, they will get a digest email that mentions your protocol. And yeah, so groups are really great to make protocols more discoverable. There are about 1,000 groups on protocols.io now on a whole bunch of different research topics and fields. And a lot of the groups are all open, so you can feel free to join them. If there's a group for your research field, you can join it. And if there's none for your research field yet, feel free to also create a group. It's really easy. You just click a new group and you can set up a new group for your research field, and you can invite others to participate in the group collaboration there. So groups are very great to make protocols more discoverable within a specific scientific community. And here, just to wrap up, is again my reproducible method checklist. Just be sure to to make a digital, add an abstract to put the protocol into context. And then also one that I didn't mention before is tell others what the status of your protocol is. So that means, is this protocol something that has been working for you? Is this something you're still developing? Is this something that you tried and maybe didn't work? So just let others know about the status of the protocol. And also try to add enough details, so images, videos, region details, equipment detail, timers, and other components. Use a clear and active voice. Make your steps in a chronological order, add keywords, and also add any additional tips and notes that would be helpful for that method. And with that, I'm at the end of this webinar, and I'm happy to take any questions now if there's any questions. Or if you have any questions later, feel free to always send me an email at anita@protocols.io. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining this webinar today.